Hi, everyone. Hey, Marissa. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you.
How you holding up?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
A little crazy for you this time of year?
It's crazy this time of year. This is the best time of year when we plan the future.
Exactly. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. We'll get into this real quickly. Just really want to do a quick introduction. AdMix, here we are the gateway for brands to enter the metaverse. I know that everyone wants to know what that means. And Marissa, you and I talked and laughed about that a little bit yesterday. And, our approach is just very simple. We own property, we help build, on that land for brands, and then we help activate and extend that. So it's really a full stack experience. But today we're going to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion with Marissa. And I'm very excited. Marissa brings a tremendous background in CPG with some tremendous brands at Pepsi, and has recently made the move over to the NFL. And, Marissa, if you can, talk to us a little bit about what excited you most about this switch.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I spent 18 years at PepsiCo, wonderful journey, wonderful company, all of our, hopefully favorite snack and beverage brands. But when this opportunity came up, I mean, it's really something you cannot turn down, right? When you think about the power of the platform that the NFL represents, and yes, of course, the joy of the game and all of those things in fandom. But particular when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, oh my goodness, this is probably the place to make the most impact, right? And
Right.
hey, everybody knows that the league is on a journey, as most companies are. But I think that the decisions that we make and the way that we do things moving forward will have such a critical and massive impact to so many that I couldn't, turn down the opportunity. I think it's an exciting time to be in the league for all the reasons, right? Of the
Of course.
game and the league business. But even more so because of what I think we can deliver from a diversity, equity, and inclusion point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, I think that you're right. It's definitely been a journey, and there have been some bumps and bruises along the way. But I think that this platform now really provides you with this global opportunity, and is really exciting. I mean, you've just got such a community to advertise to and to bring into the fold of the NFL. And I'm excited to see all the things that you're going to be doing within the next coming years. So, you know, you touched upon that. I think that more and more corporations are looking to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's been obviously a very big topic. So from a society standpoint, how is the NFL approaching it from a marketing perspective? I know we talked a little bit about that yesterday, but if you could go into a little bit more detail about your thoughts and what plans you can share of where you're planning to take everything.
Yeah, I'll start very high level, and I'll take you specifically into our marketing initiatives and our marketing strategy, but at a very, very high level. I mean, diversity, equity, and inclusion is the foundation of everything that we do, because at the end of the day, it's not rocket science. We have to be a reflection of our communities, and in Pepsi, it was a reflection of our consumer base. For the league, it's a reflection of our fan base. And when you look at our fan base, I mean, Super Bowl, 206 million viewers, that's 2/3 of the US. There's bound to be a very diverse set of fans that we have to make sure that we connect with. And so that's at the very foundation, we have to reflect the communities that we serve. But very specifically for us in marketing, we have a two-prong approach. On the one hand, we want to communicate the joy and the excitement of the game, and the fact that the game brings people together. And that in and of itself, speaks to the diversity of the nation, how we bring, the nation together, and how we can become a unifying force. But the other, part of the two-prong approach is really elevating the stories of what the league does in our communities every day. I don't think people realize and see the impact and the influence and really the force for good that our players do every day, that our clubs do every day, that, we call it the NFL family, but that impact is massive. And we just haven't really amplified or told those stories. And I think it's important, for people to see how communities are being impacted every day, with the influence of the league.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, as I think you stated before, you've got a tremendous platform to be able to really, at both a grassroots level all the way up to the corporate level. And you've got 32 teams and 32 communities to reach out to, and in addition to all the national and international activities that you have at your disposal.
Definitely.
And you talked about you're at the team meetings now, at the league meetings, which is a crazy time. So again, thank you for peeling out some time for us today. Where do you see, along those lines, that biggest opportunity for engagement with consumers around diversity, equity, and inclusion in 2022? You've got such a wide, a deep bench to go to, again, at each different level. If you could share with everyone a little bit about that strategy of, from, a local community level all the way up to the corporate level, that would be, wonderful to hear.
Yeah, I mean, let me start first with marketing, right? And how we engage with our fans. I mean, obviously the foundation is representation. Our fans have to see themselves in the work. That's the foundation of everything. And I think we've done a better job, I will say. There's still obviously a lot more we can do, but a better job of really being more representative of the fan base in our communications. I talked about that two-prong approach at kickoff this past season. We kicked off with, our We Run as One campaign. And just as it say, we run as one, we're many communities running as one in the pursuit of the joy of this game, right? We launched a really cool spot where there's many different people talking about we got your back, because the fans have the teams back and the teams have the fans back, and just all of these diverse communities coming together is really, really powerful. But then we also did a lot of work to elevate, our communities of color and our diverse communities. One of the biggest and boldest moves that we did, was recognize our LGBTQ fans during Pride. And, we had a very powerful spot. We basically came out and said, hey, football is gay, football is lesbian, football is queer, football is for everyone. Football is Latino, football is African-American. And it really, football is for everyone. And I don't think we had done, the best job that we could to really illustrate that. So moving forward, making sure our fans feel seen is kind of the foundation, right? So you'll see a lot more in terms of marketing communication. I think our events, the way that we go about engaging with our diverse communities, now we have an army of influencers across all, diverse ethnic groups, across all ages, gender, and it's great to see that, because our influencers are telling the story in their own words and really reflecting that. So that's going to be, really important. And I'd be remiss, obviously we're talking marketing, but hey, it needs to start with people in the league, and everyone in the league has to reflect that diversity too, right? So our hiring practices, there's obviously a lot in the media around that. I think we've made a lot of progress internally in the league, in our executive ranks. You're starting to see, and we're starting to bring in that diversity. And we've got to do a better job in the league. And I actually, I can't talk a lot about everything going on, but I will say there was a really exciting press release that came out yesterday, just talking about the league really upping its requirements around the hiring of female and minority coaches across all of our clubs. And that's going to be key, because you need diversity, obviously in marketing and at the executive level, but you need it everywhere, everywhere in the league, right? So that's going to be super exciting. I don't know how much you know, but this year also we signed a new deal to expand our league internationally.
No, I
So
didn't know that.
18 teams will be playing in Mexico. Really bringing to light, the energy of the league, for all of our Mexican fans, which are huge fans of the NFL, both in the US and in Mexico. We're expanding our games in England. We're also going to Munich. So our international approach is also, reflective of the spirit of just bringing in kind of this global sense and global look at the sport that we really haven't had before. So it is really, really exciting.
Yeah, no. That is great news. I know. I remember back when the first game was played in London, and I just thought that was so exciting and so interesting to see the expansion overseas, and now moving to other markets. I think that's just phenomenal, and I think the fan base is reflective of that for the NFL. It is really becoming a global brand, much to some degree like the other leagues that have expanded globally. And that's really exciting to see. And that you're taking that same approach overseas with your marketing as well, I think is obviously very important. So that's fantastic to hear, and congrats. As specific programs are launching in 2022. What do you think, has been that you can share, is really, really innovative or unique in reaching a new community? I know you talked about the LGBTQ community. Are there any other programs in terms of how you're specifically reaching that you can share that you think are really innovative or unique?
Yeah, I mean, you'll see it a lot in our advertising. You'll see the continuation of what we did in 2021. So I don't know if you saw, all of our playoff spots were Two Chain, Two
Yeah.
Chainz was kind of our spokesperson. We used a ton of kind of social digital media to communicate with our younger fans. So all of that will continue, but I think more and more really linking the connection that the league has to pop culture, because that's where you see the influence of diversity and inclusion. My goodness. I mean, you look at what we did in Miami and, when we brought, J-Lo and Shakira and really the Latino feel to the Super Bowl. And then,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, LA was absolutely unbelievable. Bringing together, communities of color representing Inglewood right
Oh
there in
yeah.
LA for everyone to see. So leveraging the power of pop culture, not just in the big moments like Super Bowl, but really across the year. I think we have a very exciting event coming up in the draft. And you're
Yeah.
going to see again a lot more of a personal, human, more authentic approach. We call it our helmets off strategy. And in
Okay.
doing that, you will see the diversity of the prospects that are coming into the league, how those prospects not only obviously play the game and are awesome, quarterbacks and linebackers and everything else, but how they're bringing their communities with
Right.
them, right?
Right.
And I think really telling those stories of, I mean, gosh, the moment that you are welcomed into the league is a massive moment, not just for you as a player, but for your family, for
Right.
the community that you bring with you. And I think that gives us a big opportunity to elevate, again, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the stories that we tell, because they're there. They've been
Oh
there.
yeah.
By the way, they've been there forever. Not that I think we just haven't really told those stories. And it's important. It's really important.
Yeah, no. I 100% agree with you. You read about and hear about all the good that NFL players do to bring back to their community and to give back to their community. It's, you always, I love those NFL stories that you always see about this player, what they're doing at a personal level, but it's nice that you're also going to highlight that even, more so in the future, because I think that, yeah, the NFL historically has always been, very diverse, from a player standpoint for the past 30, 40 years. So it's nice to be able to see that coming to the forefront now, not only at a court at a league-wide level, but also, really celebrating the players and the diversity of all the players. as you look to 2022 and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we talked a little bit about innovative or unique. What are you most excited about from an initiative standpoint? I know there's so much that you're doing, and I can definitely feel the passion and the excitement in your voice. Is there one particular program you're most excited about to launch in 2022?
I mean,
2022.
Yeah, there is a lot. I'm just most excited that I think people will see the difference, and not just in the work that we do on the front of the camera, but I think when you look at who we will be working with behind the camera, behind the scenes, the collaborations that we'll do with, whether it's young designers, whether it's musicians or artists, really painting the diversity there, because it's really important that we partner with all diverse partners, as well as showcase the diversity. So I am definitely excited for that. I think I'm very excited that you will see pipeline programs, again, to really elevate diversity and inclusion, and bring in those communities that haven't really been in the forefront in the league. So whether it's working with HBCUs, the Latino community, our Asian community, LGBTQ, I mean, it's just exciting to be able to bring, what we see the future fan base, right? When you think about our fan base and the future of the league, it is increasingly young, by the way, very young, very diverse, and very multifaceted, right? So we have to be that in order to continue, and grow that fandom over time. We can't take for granted the fans that we have.
No, absolutely.
We have to continue to build our fans in the future, right? So
right, absolutely, and the fans of the future have to represent society today.
Absolutely.
And it sounds to me like you're really taking an integrated approach to the subsection of what you're doing as a whole, though, but integrating it into the overall feel and appeal of the league. And
I will say sorry to interrupt you, but
I will say not at all.
That I can't believe I didn't mention, because it's probably what I'm most excited about. The way women will interact with and be seen in the league will also be elevated. And when you think about women, women are influencing every part of the league. They're not just, executives like myself. We've got presidents and GMs, but, future coaches and even future players. When you think about the future of the sport, so there's going to be emphasis on flag football and, female participation in the sport. I think that gets me super jazzed. Because again, football's for everyone. And, as we develop the league, women is a big priority. We have 80 million female fans today. It is the highest of any sports league.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to continue to grow that. So that's exciting as well.
As painful as it is for me to acknowledge, which I think yesterday, lifelong Bears fan, and my daughter is a Packers fan. So that has been a painful experience for her whole life for me. But the fact that she's just an NFL fan, I love, and the competitive nature between the Bears and the Packers, and she's just a big Packers fan. I love it. So it's nice to see, though, that she's grown up and still, even though she's not a Bears fan as much as it pains me, she's a football fan, right? She can tell you all the players on the Packers, and she loves it. She's 15, and the fact that she's now this next generation of football fan, I'm sure has got to make you happy. And the fact that she's so into it is exciting from my perspective, because I just care that she's a football fan.
Yes, for sure.
But again, it's all, I love the story that you're weaving of really, there's so much inclusion across all different areas within, what you're doing, that it's going to be so prevalent and so obvious. And I think that's really going to have a big impact this year in terms of, just to see and to watch that unveiling. I'm really looking forward to watching that this year. So, and throughout yours, as you've grown your marketing career, what have you found that's had the most positive impact as it relates to you personally from a diversity, equity, and inclusion? You've had a long and illustrious corporate career at many different brands and in leadership, and as a woman in leadership, a female leader within marketing. What's been, what have you found to be the most positive impact for you personally?
Yeah, it's a great question, because obviously it's been a very long journey and it continues. But I will tell you, for me personally, it's been those individuals and organizations where the focus isn't necessarily on diversity, it is on inclusion.
Got it.
And there is a big difference between diversity and inclusion, and they're both important. But it's the times where it wasn't so much the focus around what you look like and that you had to have a mosaic. It was more around, how do you embrace the people that are around you and make sure their voices are heard, make sure that those voices are incorporated into the actions that we take. That is inclusion to me.
Right.
So it's always been people who never even cared that I was a female Latina leader. They just cared that I was a leader, period, end of story, right? And they saw that. And then, obviously being a female and being Latina matters, because then I bring that, all of what that means and represents and all the color of that. And it enhances, everything as you bring these diverse voices, right? But it does start with inclusion, because you can have the most diverse organization, but if you don't hear those voices or incorporate those ideas, it just, it's just it's a nice mosaic, but it's not as powerful as it could be. So that I would say had been my lesson. And as I come into the NFL, that's my focus. It's like, yes, we need to be diverse, and we have work to do there, but let's start by being inclusive, and then the rest will come, right? So that would be my take, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, because you're right. The mosaic can be there, but if it's just not really incorporated within the organization, it's really a missed opportunity. And I think that over the years, you've definitely, I think it first started with diversity, and then from there it became, okay, great, we're here, but you need to hear us now. And it needs to really become, and you're absolutely right, you're a leader. You're not just a female leader, you're a leader. You have, and that should be the way that you're considered. And it's nice to hear that that's, really the focus, and that's where you are, and how you're planning to bring that into the NFL with you as your career grows. And, along those same lines, what's been the biggest challenge that you've experienced over the years? Is it throughout your marketing career? Is there any particular challenge that stands out in which you've been able to overcome and that you were most happy with the outcome?
Gosh, there's been many challenges, right?
Sure.
There are always barriers to overcome. I've been very lucky that I've always had people at my side supporting me. I really do think the biggest barrier is just people who lack the authenticity, right? And I always say it's okay to get things wrong. I think we try so hard to say the right thing and get it right. It bothers me. This is a very personal view, by the way. But I think we try so hard to say the right word or the right thing that we don't focus on actually just walking the walk. Actions are louder than words. And you can say the wrong thing, and if you mean well, then we can have a conversation and there's a moment of education that happens. But
Right.
The heart has to be open to that. And I think the biggest barrier and my biggest pet peeve is just people who talk the talk but don't have the open heart to really walk the walk, right? And diversity, equity, and inclusion, you can talk the talk all you want. You got to walk the walk, and that's hard. It's very hard. And it's a journey, like you said. Sometimes you walk along and you take some great steps, and sometimes, gosh, you make a mistake and you got to walk backwards a little bit and then get ahead. But walking the walk is the biggest
Yeah.
challenge and also the biggest opportunity.
Yeah, and I think from a society standpoint, as I've watched this change, I think that's probably been the hardest thing, right? For those changes to take place, and and in everything that, both from a brand marketing perspective, and just you've got to be authentic, right? And if it's not authentic, it's going to fall flat. And I think what you've described today of your approach, your philosophy, the approach that the NFL is taking, it feels very authentic, right? And I think that is wonderful to hear, because that's going to come through in everything that you do, and that's going to resonate with those communities too. And they're going to feel that inclusion. They're going to feel that this is for me, and that they're talking to me as an individual, not just as a fan, but who I represent as a fan of the NFL. And that's really exciting. Before we've got one question right now. I'm just going to take a pause, and if anybody has any questions, please feel free to jump in. We have one question so far, and thank you so much for asking. Is diversity is being invited to the party, and inclusion is asked to dance at the party, which I think is kind of interesting. And I think you touched on that a little bit in terms of kind of how you're doing it, but absolutely, inclusion is so much a part of it, and yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective to look at it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's exactly, what I'm saying in terms of inclusion is first. Representation is a foundation, but if you're not listening or
Right.
inviting those people in, it's really not, it doesn't make the impact that it has to make. So it's important to ensure that the focus is on inclusion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And it was, I think that was a great point you made earlier, is that it just really is about that inclusiveness. Throughout your career, obviously, working at Pepsi for such a long time, and working on, in leadership on all those brands, what's been the most, the program that you're most proud of? If it's around diversity, inclusion, or equity and inclusion, great. But like, what's probably the most shining moment for you that you're most proud of?
That's a tough question too, because obviously there's been a lot of things, but for me, so at PepsiCo about 4 years ago, we started a Hispanic business unit. And at the time I didn't want to be, the person, because I thought, well, gosh, I'm kind of being pegged to do this. And I didn't realize just the power of what that meant, because for the first time, a massive company recognized the economic significance
Right.
the Hispanic community represented to the company, so much so that they created a business unit, dedicated to the 60 million Hispanics in the US, and to make sure, making sure that we, served them well, communicated with them well, made the right products for them, sold them in the right way to our customers,
Right.
spoke the language, like all of those things were so important. And I don't think I realized it when I was first tapped to do it. And as we took that journey and we created this team that, all Latino, serving, our Latino communities, and we saw the economic impact that had, but also the cultural impact, the internal impact that it had on our employees, the external impact it had in our communities. It's incredible. And, I'm so excited. It's still alive and well. I think Esperanza Tisdale, who leads it, has been on Brand Innovators and has talked a lot about, all the power of the things that they're doing there. So it's exciting to see that legacy continues. So that's probably, I would say, probably one of my proudest.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome. That's exciting. And I love how you just shared the eye-opening experience of the impact that it had throughout that program, that really made it important to you to be able for you to see the impact of what you were doing on a broader scale.
Yeah,
so so that's great. We do have another question, which I think actually, plays right into that last question. That is, what are the insights that you include in your campaign briefs? that lead to authentic storylines and narratives versus simply representation and casting?
That is a fantastic
That's
question.
a great question. That's a great question.
Yes, and it is incredibly important to have the right insights because nuance is everything. And so I will say the very first thing is clearly identifying our audience. And so it's not enough to say, okay, we're doing something for Latinos or we're doing something for the LGBT community. I mean, in and of itself, those communities are so diverse and have so many passions. So our insights are get to a very specific point in terms of who is that audience? You know, are we talking to our Gen Z gamer? Are we talking to, are we talking to our avid fan who watches, 10 games on NFL Network and, goes to every game? Or are we talking to someone who's never been to a football game and loves soccer, as an example? I mean, there's so many nuances to the insights. And we really, really unwrap that person that we're going to talk to really understand who that person is. And then what is it that we want this person to believe or feel or think because of this particular ad, right? Or this particular initiative. And that can vary too. Do we want them to feel inspired? Do we want them to be informed? Do we want them to connect with the player or the team? Or do we want them to tune in, right?
Right.
There's different things, but it's a great question because I think the power of our spots only goes as far as the power of the insights and the tightness of that brief. So it's very, very important we get that right.
And, it's not the way I look at it. So we bring, as I mentioned, brands into the metaverse, and we get a lot of questions like this. And the relevance here that I'll tie in is that it's about what are the outcomes that you desire, right? If you start from like, what are those outcomes that I want to do, and then build that program towards that, whether it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, no matter what it is, I think from a brand perspective at that brief, if you're going to start from there, that'll really help drive that authenticity because you understand what that outcome is that you're looking for. I think we've got time for one last question. And how does incorporating culture mean to you in your role within the NFL?
How does incorporating culture mean? Sorry, can you say that again? I want to make sure I get it right.
Maybe, okay. How does culture, I guess, mean to you in your role? Like, how are you incorporating culture into? So much.
I mean, we incorporate culture into everything we do, right? And culture, by the way, is a lot more than ethnicity, right? Or
Absolutely.
I mean, so living the day-to-day culture is critical. This is why, by the way, we have an army of influencers out there that are in it. Because I couldn't tell you, I do my thing and what I do, but I couldn't tell you, everything that our fans do, because I'm not sometimes the typical, either I may be the typical fan, but I may not be the new young, right. All what do you call it, digital native fan or sure. Whatever. But having those influencers is key. I mean, and making sure, like I said, I mean, incorporating local culture, whether it's at a Super Bowl level, incorporating Inglewood, working with artists, fashion designers, musicians. I mean, all of that incorporates pop culture. Everyone is an influencer these days, right? So I think it's important. Yeah, it's important to have our eyes and our ears and all of us like really hooked into that community, mm-hmm. and making sure that that community itself influences our brand, right? They shape it. So I think just making sure there's a dialogue there is really important.
So in essence, you're sort of using that influencer pipeline, if you will, to kind of impact and kind of keep your finger on the pulse from a cultural standpoint, how things are changing and how the fans are responding based off of that. That's Yeah, I mean, I think
Absolutely.
that's a great, that's a great way to help drive those insights and understand a little bit more so about how you're reaching those audiences and those communities, which is really relevant. I don't know if we're going to get the boot here in a second, but if
Looks
not,
like
I can't tell. But I do have one more question.
okay.
Where do you think companies, and I'm going to change this a little bit than the question that I asked, but not in a positive way. Where do you think companies are getting diversity, equity, and inclusion right? In 2022.
Where do I think they're getting it right?
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, there's a lot of really amazing examples, right? Whether it's, I mean, you see the proliferation of D&I leads, right?
Yeah.
And the focus that D&I has in many organizations. We, by the way, also just brought in, not like a year ago, our own head of D&I.
Right.
So I think that's really important. I think you see it in who companies collaborate with. I think there's a more openness to collaborate with a broader group of, partners,
Mhm.
whether it be advertising agencies or again, insights providers. I think making sure, there's representation everywhere, not just in front of the camera or in the things people see, but behind the scenes. I see a lot of progress in hiring. We have a lot more to go, but
Sure.
I see a lot of progress in hiring, in retention, in development. I would love to see, hey, more women on boards, more minority representation on boards of directors and companies. I'd love to see, more diverse representation in our advertising, in products that we
Right.
create. I mean, there's so much we can still do, but I'm very optimistic that we're headed in the right way. We're at least talking and raising the right issues, which means we're pushing, right?
Yeah.
And the more we push, the more I think we'll get there.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And again, I think it gets back to inclusion, which you mentioned. It's having that voice and having that seat at the table, but to actually be able to impact what you're doing, because it's actually, being incorporated into programs and other hires that are, existing within the organization. And it certainly sounds like you're doing a great job, leading the NFL in 2022 with a lot of your diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. So I'm excited to see that.
Awesome. I'm excited too.
Any predictions for Arizona in
Oh,
for the
goodness.
Super Bowl next year? I know it's so early.
No,
I know my
no.
Bears aren't going to be there. I know
No predictions, but a plug on, hey, draft is coming up in a
right.
few weeks, and then we're releasing the schedule right after that. So that may give you a good sense.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate the time today, Marissa, and congratulations.